Hi there, I'm Coach Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And in this video, we're going to be talking to you about they're really done this time.
I promise this is the last straw.
This is it. I know this is it.
Before we get into it, I did want to say that Craig and I are available for coaching sessions. So if you would like to talk about your situation one-on-one with one of us, you can do so by heading to the website and booking from there.
Yep, we'll be happy to help you out because we know how confusing these situations can be. And many of you are in situations where this isn't your first breakup, where somebody said they're done before. Maybe your ex told you, I'm done. This is it. I can't take it anymore. Things build up inside of us, and we get to a point where we just can't handle how we feel. We don't like how we feel. It's uncomfortable. We're frustrated. We're disappointed. We're hurt. And it builds up, and now it feels final. Right? Mm-hmm. Even if you broke up numerous times, this time could be the one where it's like, I know they're not coming back this time. Maybe your ex is acting different than those other previous breakups. Maybe they're colder. Maybe they're saying more decisive, definitive things to you that feels like this really feels serious. So you got to consider doing things differently and working through some stuff if you're going to try and turn those situations around.
Yeah, we figured we would make this video to talk about this situation. Many of you are in that quote-unquote final breakup. There's a quote-unquote for a reason there. Mm-hmm. But it's true. Sometimes you will see your ex acting colder. They're less willing to tolerate certain things than they did before. Maybe they're even mean. Sometimes you see in the final breakup, there's just nasty words that are exchanged. Yep. It becomes very hostile. So these are some things that you can see, and it feels very different. Yep. And their coldness is equivalent to their exhaustion of the situation.
And how much they've been pushed.
Exactly. Everybody has limits. I think I say this very often nowadays. Everybody has limits.
It's true.
And there's usually one straw that breaks the camel's back, as the saying says, to where they've been pushed too far.
Yep.
So the complaint that they've been telling you might have finally caught up to them. They might have been telling you for years, in some cases, hey, do this thing. Hey, I need you to work on this thing. And you might have said, yeah, okay, I'll do it later. It's not a big deal. Maybe there's been previous breakups because of that complaint or whatever it might be, or series of complaints.
Sometimes it's because somebody wants the relationship to go further, like move in together, get engaged, get married. Why aren't we doing this? I want more, and you won't do it. And then they get to the point where, like, you know what? I've asked you for so long to do this thing. It's obvious you don't want to do it. And then they're done. And then, of course, the person's like, no, I'll do it. I do want to get engaged. Yeah, exactly. I want to get married.
We do see that. It could also be around habits. It could be around career. You're smoking all the time. Quit smoking. It could be, you haven't advanced in your career. You haven't gotten this house. A lot of times it does have to do with stability, things in the future, how the relationship might go. Sometimes the final breakup can also be impulsive. When people are angry, sometimes they can make decisions to make a point. And that can lead to several breakups in a relationship.
And that can be shocking.
Yeah, that can be shocking.
Like, I didn't think they were really going to mean it. Don't take people for granted.
It's true. One thing that can be also shocking is when you actually see them trying in those last couple months before the breakup. You can start thinking, man, they were super affectionate to me before they broke up with me. They had said, I loved you. They were packing me lunches. They were, maybe even the intimacy was better right before the end. In their mind, they might think, well, I tried. That was my last shot. That was me investing in the relationship, really trying to make it work, but then I realized that I couldn't. And many times people won't tell you that they are doing this. Yeah. They won't say, hey, I'm putting in a little bit of effort now because I really want to see how this will go before I totally cut it off.
That's true.
They're not going to say that.
Such a good point, because they're doing it and they're quietly doing it, and then you're, appreciating it, but you're not understanding, like, the consequence of if it doesn't pay off.
Exactly. And that can really boil down to a communication issue. So, and also them being exhausted. They're saying, well, I gave this a one last ditch effort to see where it would go, and it didn't work out.
Yeah.
And that one is a bit cruel, because then on your end, you're thinking, well, if I would have known, then I would have acted completely different in those last couple months. I would have done what they asked. So it can feel unfair when this happens.
Yeah. Yeah, it really does. And particularly if they were an avoidant, they're going to say, I tried. And you're going to be like, I didn't know you were trying.
Right, right.
Because an anxious person might be more vocal in, I'm trying here. And the avoidant's like secretly trying. And then they break up with you and they're like, but I did try. And you're kind of thinking, well, you didn't try that much.
They're like, I held the door open for you on Thursday.
Yeah.
That was me trying.
And you're like, that was it? And like, well, what else do you want?
Right, so it can look very different.
Now, there may have been a few things that had happened to you throughout the relationship. Like you may have been accustomed to their forgiveness. Like if you were the party that kept wronging them or neglecting them or ignoring their needs, you just assumed they were going to go that way forever. They were going to tolerate being neglected. They were going to tolerate you not stepping up into those areas that they asked you to. And so you just got so used to it and you get caught in that pattern that you think it's going to last forever. Well, like we talked about earlier, people can only take so much.
Yeah.
So you have to understand little things add up in relationships and you got to be aware of that. A big thing that I tell you guys all the time is never take someone for granted. It's one of the biggest mistakes you could ever make. That's with friends, family, people that you love. Don't take them for granted. You treat them good, the best that you can, as often as you can. Nobody's going to be perfect, but if you take them for granted, you're going to regret it. It's going to cause you to neglect them. It's going to cause you to become selfish and self-absorbed and not do the things that make them happier in the connection. So you always want to consider other people's feelings. And until you can, create a spot in your mind to do that or be aware of that and not be just me, you're going to wind up losing people that you really love.
Yeah. And one thing that I see often in these repeat breakups is that the couple ends up treating each other worse after each breakup. Because in their mind, they're thinking, oh, I can get away with this kind of behavior.
True.
And they'll still take me back. So you want to really take someone's forgiveness as precious. It's not something that you'll be granted every time. And if this is the last time, you might not feel like you're going to be granted it at all.
Yeah.
So you really want to take this seriously and take someone seriously when they're willing to repair something. So there might be something that you're angry about that's preventing you from seeing your partner's point of view.
That's true.
And
that's a good point.
A lot of these repeat breakups, it's typically roadblock, gridlock type of issues that are happening where there might not be a perfect solution. There might need to be a bit of compromise. And maybe both of you are on total opposite extremes on this situation. And so you need to be able to have some understanding to make this work in the long run. You don't have to agree with your ex 100%. You don't have to agree with your partner 100%. But there needs to be some flexibility. And if you are heated about an issue, if you are still hurting from things that were said in the first breakup, it's going to be really hard to attain that understanding. Normally, there's a theme in all of the breakups if you've had multiple of them. And sometimes it can be hard to tell, but I promise you with some reflection, you'll be able to find some semblance of a pattern there.
Yeah. Like maybe, for example, this one I see a lot, intimacy. One person wants more intimacy than the other. They keep telling their partner. The partner just neglects it. And finally the person's like, I can't do this anymore. And then all of a sudden that other person's like, no, but I do want to make an effort. It is important to me now. And it's like, well, you didn't show that when they asked for it.
Right. A similar one is people who are depressed. So maybe your partner will start to notice, okay, maybe your hygiene isn't where it should be. Maybe they'll notice, man, you're not ambitious as you once were. You're not as active as you once were. So these individual issues can all be separate breakups, but there can be an underlining theme of you lack motivation or you're going through something with your mental health that's preventing you to show up the way you want to as a partner. So pay attention to these things, and it takes self-reflection. That's why we're getting into this.
Yeah.
Many of you, like I had said before, haven't healed from even the first breakup. And so you can carry this with you like a really heavy backpack throughout the rest of the relationship and sometimes reference it in later breakups to hurt your partner more.
Yep, it's true.
Remember back in 1987 when you said that I look like a toad, I haven't forgotten that.
I don't think anyone would forget that.
So these things can add up.
Are we working through some trauma for you?
No, it's called a toad. Brittany from the 2nd grade. I will always remember. No. So these things can stick with you.
Yeah.
And, you go back to these painful memories that you haven't worked through with your partner, and then it starts to turn into those 4 horsemen that Gottman talks about. It starts turning into criticism. It starts turning into contempt. You start to view your partner differently after the 3rd or 4th breakup. You start to see all those character flaws and view them completely differently. So pay attention to these things. If this has happened in your relationship, be more aware of it. And many of you are probably watching this thinking, not my ex. She's really rotten, or he's really messed up. It's not just me. Try to look at it from their point of view too.
Yep. Mm-hmm. We know that when you're going through situations like this, particularly when you're going through multiple breakups, it can be exhausting. You're going to be tired. You're going to be confused. You're going to be filled with anxiety because you're probably thinking to yourself, it does feel more final. This time does feel different. And you don't know what to do. Well, you've got to figure out a way to break the pattern, okay? And to really work through this stuff, because if they come back again, you're just going to go through the same thing over and over again. You have to break these patterns to create something healthy. One of the old intros that I said was, breakups are a symptom of problems in our relationship. Yeah, everybody wants to know, how do I get my ex back? But then not as many people want to know, well, how do I fix this and create something healthy with them? But if that isn't your end goal, then getting them back is only going to be temporary anyway, because you broke up likely for reasons, maybe there was a dynamic that you guys have created, neglect, or the anxious avoidant trap example. And so if you don't do something to fix that bond and can do it in real time, which is difficult because our emotions get the best of us, it's just going to fall apart again. So your goal should not be just get my ex back. It's got to be, how can I get my ex back and create something healthy for the both of us?
Mm-hmm. And many of you at this period will overcompensate because we are bombarded with romance movies to tell us to do that. We've all seen that Lifetime movie, whatever, with the boom box and the grand gestures. And maybe there have been things that have worked in the past. Well, in previous breakups, I begged. In previous breakups, I sent, a dozen roses, and then they took me back. We're talking about fixing those longer standing patterns. And this really starts with fixing your own issues, figuring out what they are and fixing them. And we might have that tendency to overcompensate, to over-apologize, to overpromise before we are actually ready because we want our ex back. We are so used to this pattern, we feel like, okay, well, I might know the right things to say or do that will convince this person to get back with me. That's not the goal here. The goal is longevity. The goal is to be able to create something sustainable with this person that you really care about. This person is to make lasting change in your life so you don't continue the cycle of hurt and pain.
Yep.
So no contact can be that thing for many of you. We're not saying ignore your ex, but we are saying if you and your ex are broken up, and we're not saying ignore your ex, and of course it depends on each situation. Mm-hmm. If you think that it's final and your ex is no longer talking to you, we do not recommend reaching out to them.
Yep.
Maybe in the past you have, maybe in the past it worked, and that's great, but it ended you up in this pattern that you're trying to get out of. So we encourage you to do something different. We encourage you to really learn how to set up boundaries, how to stay disciplined, how to really work on yourself and really prepare yourself, because for you it's going to be a lot harder than for others who haven't been through many breakups. For you, you are stuck in this pattern, and once you're back in that relationship, you are a lot more inclined to do things the same way you have in the past.
And your ex is going to be a lot more critical in you haven't changed. Mm-hmm. So you've got to focus on the growth. That mindset has to be overwhelming you of just, how do I get better? How do I improve this? How do I grow? doing the creative healing course of the workbooks every day, getting into therapy, thinking about the tough questions that we're always asking, and figuring out how you can show true change and growth. Because you don't want to look like you're taking this opportunity for granted or taking them for granted. And honestly, many people take their partner for granted. Mm-hmm. They think because they have a high interest level, they're always going to have a high interest level. And that is not the way human beings operate at all. At all. That's like saying once you feed somebody, they're never going to be hungry again.
Yeah.
What? No, I'm sorry. That's not the way it works. Especially with Victoria. She's always eating.
I'm always
You feed her once, she's still hungry.
I'm a snacker.
But you have to look at it like that. You have to continually nourish that connection. If you don't, they're going to be starved for attention, affection, love, all of those things. And they're going to start to look for other people to do it because it's your job to help take care of them. And while they're responsible for communicating their needs and their feelings to you, if they do and you repeatedly neglect them, what's going to happen?
Right.
Nothing good.
And really be aware of your triggers, guys. Being back into this relationship where there has been an on and off dynamic, like I said before, you're more inclined to fall back into those patterns. You already know how your partner ticks you off. You already know how your ex ticks you off. Think about how you typically react to that. Think about how you can react differently. They are not going to change if you don't change also. So going back into that situation and then trying to expect that it's magically going to work in the long term is not going to set you up for success. We've seen people go from very difficult situations, very deeply ingrained patterns, anxious avoidant trap, multiple breakups, to being able to work through their issues and create a mature and healthy relationship. So we are very hopeful that you are able to do that, in the very least for your own life, in the very least if you do end up with somebody else, you don't start to reenact those patterns with someone new either.
But you got to do a lot more than watch no contact videos, I can tell you that.
This is true.
All right. Hopefully this one's been helpful to you. Of course, if you want to get our help personally, you can do that on my website, askcraig.net. I do email coaching and I do Skype. Coach Victoria is also available for Skype coaching.
I'm here whenever you'd like to chat.
Just click on her name at the top of the website to schedule with her. But that's it for this video. I'm Coach Craig Kenneth.
And I'm Coach Victoria.
And we will talk with you soon.